that we use to make sure sensitive data is hidden. So lots of times we all have secrets, right? And so secrets, we probably don't want the entire world to know them. So what we want to do is we want to make sure these secrets are private, and we want to be able to make sure that any random person cannot just come in and see them, right? So this is kind of what it is. We use encapsulation, which is using private variables as well as get and set methods to make sure that any special secret data is hidden from the public, I guess is one way you could put it, right? So let's talk a little bit about our private variables. So before, we all had access modifiers. One very classic example was public, right? And we talked about public, and we mentioned that that means that anybody can access the variable. That means anybody can see the variable, anybody can use it, we can play with it however we want. Now we have a new access modifier, and that is private. And what private means is that we cannot create any other class or object and still have that variable. So for example, in this picture here where we have our person class and it has a private string name, this means that only the class person has this string. Any class that extends person, any object of person will not be able to access our private string. It'll make a little bit more sense in a second when we do an example. But basically what we need to know is that any extended class or any object of the class does not have access to the private variable, right? So we can kind of see why this might be good for protecting our data. Right, so new access modifier, private, is used to protect our data. I had to reload my page there, but let's keep going. And another thing that we use for Java encapsulation is get and set methods. Now we kind of went a little bit into this in our constructor videos. Recall that in our constructor videos, which I believe I can pull up the slide here, in our constructor mini project, we had functions that both set and got, it was like set and get the name. I don't think this is the right one, or maybe it's this one. I can't tell. Well, I don't think it's in these slides. I can't find it now. But we had both set and get. Oh, right. This was in our first mini project. It was the Be the Host mini project, if you guys remember that. We had both set and get. I remember we could have two functions, one function to set the rating and one function to get the rating. And at that time, I explained that sometimes we don't want one entire function that both sets it and gets it all in one turn. Maybe sometimes we just want to save the variable for future use. Well, this comes into play for Java encapsulation. Java encapsulation is all about splitting up our functions. So we would have set and get, and this makes sure that we're able to give our private strings or private variables values in our objects, for example. So take a look at our second picture. We have person, my object, new person, and then we know that name up here is a private string. So when we try to access that from our object, it does not work. However, if we created a function, a method that said set name, and we passed in the name value, then that would set the value of my private variable to whatever name I gave it. So basically, guys, this set and get would be pretty useful in terms of Java encapsulation, right? Because when we're protecting our data, we have to make sure that we set a new value for our variable in every object or every extended class that we create. And maybe we just want to get it whenever we want. So we're going to try to put this into practice, and hopefully it'll make some more sense. So let me go to Replit and create a new REPL. That was a lot of talking, and hopefully once we write this out, things will make a little bit more sense. Right, so I'm going to create a class, not really person because we've already seen that. Maybe I want to see like private, or like, no, that's not a good name for a class, like secrets, right? So what are some deepest, darkest secrets about a person, right? Actually, maybe not darkest secrets, but we'll create a class called secrets.java. And so we start off, we say public class secrets Okay, so this is my public class. Now, one example of a secret, this is a pretty lame secret, but it's a secret. Say this is my PIN number, right? And so this PIN number, usually what we would do is we would go public PIN ID is equal to, and then say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And so this public int PIN ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But this public int can be accessed by everyone. Now, do I want some rando creepy stranger to be able to see my ID? No. So what we can do now is we can change it to private. So now my PIN ID, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, other people who either create an object of secrets or they create an extended class of secrets, they would not be able to access this, which we'll see in a second, right? So let's go ahead and try that. So let's create a new object. So secrets, and so say secrets Sunny, right? These are my secrets is equal to new secrets, right? So we don't have a constructor, so it's a default constructor. So secrets Sunny is equal to new secrets. Now say I wanted to print out my PIN ID. So system.out.println Sunny dot, what was the name of it? PIN ID, sunny.pin ID. Okay, so usually we would be able to print this out. We would be able to print out the value of our name or our PIN ID, right? So let's try this first and we'll see what error message it gives us. And we'll just take a look. This is just trying to print out our PIN ID. And when the next step that we're going to do is we're going to try to change it or whatever. So let's look at the error. It says PIN ID has private access in secrets. Okay, so this is a pretty clear error message. It's telling us that PIN ID is private, so basically private, we cannot access it from our object. Now say I were to set my PIN ID. So say I'm a hacker, I'm a mean hacker who's trying to set my PIN ID to a new thing. So that way I won't be able to log into my account. They stole my identity. Just kidding. I hope they don't. So they change it to 56789. And then they would try to print out the print ID. Run your code and let's see. Actually, no. Let's change secrets and let's change it instead of private. Let's change it to public. So ignore these errors for now and run your code. Right now, PIN ID is currently public, right? So that means that anybody can see my PIN ID. That also means that anybody can change my PIN ID, which you can see here that my PIN ID was just changed. Oh no, I lost all my information. So that obviously is not the best way to protect your info. So change it back to private and run it again, and you can see in a second that it's going to print out the same error message as before. Right, so error PIN ID has private access, error PIN ID has private access. Basically, it's saying you cannot assign a new value to the private variable in the object, and you cannot print out the private variable in the object. Wow, it just got really dark in my room all of a sudden. Let me try and see what happened. Okay, so I think the cloud just passed over the sun out my window and then it just looked like I completely faded. But let's get back into it. Everything that we've done thus far, ignore the red lines, have basically proved that my private variable, you cannot access it or change it from anything other than its own secrets class, right? So the object, no, doesn't work. So we've proved the first part of Java encapsulation. Now the next part that I want to show you guys, so we're not really proving anything here, but I just want to show you guys, is I want to show you guys how we can get around that. So when we create secrets, the class, and we create the instance Sunny, well, say Sunny has her own secrets, and maybe the new object, Bobby, has his own secrets as well. So maybe we would want to be able to set those secrets that are different for all of our objects. And we can do that by using set and get. Now, again, set and get, you may think that it is pretty complicated. Why would you choose to separate the assigning and the returning? Well, we do this so that, like I said before, it's easier to protect our data, and sometimes we don't always want to return anything immediately. right? So this is an example of what we can do. Now, this keyword should look a little familiar from our constructors project. This get name is just going to return the name, and so set name is just going to take in an input from whatever form you want, and then set the current private name as the name from the input that you took in, right? So a little bit confusing. Let's go ahead and try that out. So private int pin ID, blah, 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 blah. Now we need to create a new variable, no, not variable, function. So public void, because we're not returning anything. Let's first set ID. So set ID is going to take in an int as my ID, right? Because I need to have an integer. We don't want a string or anything. And so all we're going to do is we're going to say this.pin ID. So pin ID, this.pin ID is this private integer right here, is going to be equal to the ID that we take in as our user input. Or not user input, as our inputs, just input in general. Right? So all this is a simple set function, right? But this should make sense from our constructors function. Now the next one I want to do is I just want to get my ID, get ID. And this doesn't need to have any parameters or anything. We're just going to return our pin ID. All right, so over here I've set my ID and I've gotten my ID. Now let's see how we can make it work in our object, right? So let's say that we know this doesn't work. Now let's try to assign Sunny a pin ID. Now instead of set pin ID like this, we would say Sunny dot set, what's the function name? Set ID. And then in the parentheses, we give me my new ID. So say my ID is going to be 34567, 34657, whatever. And so that is going to set my ID. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to get it, right? I want to print it back out. Now in this example down here, what we did is we just printed out the function. I'm not sure that'll work because we use the return keyword, but we can try. I mean, there's no harm in trying, right? So let's run this, see if I get any errors, and let's see how it works. Okay, so we're running it, and it's taking a little while, but we can wait. All right, guys, so it came back and we got an error, but let's take a look and let's see, maybe can we solve this? And the answer is yes. So error void type not allowed here for get ID. So let's fix this first error first, and maybe the second one will go away. Now notice that in our get ID function, we returned pin. So that means that our return type is not void because we're returning something, right? So instead of returning void, we are actually going to return an int, right? So hopefully this will make life a lot easier because we'll now hopefully all of our code should work, right? So we can see that the red line has disappeared because we changed the return type from nothing to an integer. And let's see. Okay, it works. So notice that we changed it and we printed it out. So now I have a pin ID. I want to change this a little bit to make it a little bit more fun. Let's say instead of pin private int, I do private string. And then I say secret1. And I don't set it to anything. Right? I don't want to set it an initial value because I don't want to give one secret to any initial value. So then I want to say set secret, and then instead of an int ID, I'm going to say string fear. So maybe what is your greatest fear? Actually, yeah, we can do fear. I want to face my fears, right? Everyone can conquer their fears. No, maybe? Okay. So we're going to say this dot secret1 is equal to fear. So we're saying this string is equal to whatever string we take in as our input. And then public int, we're not returning pin ID, we're returning secret1. And since secret1 is a string, we cannot return type int, we have returned type string. And it's not get ID, let's just call it get secret. All right, so let's try this again. And let's start over. So we're saying sunny.setSecret, And this is going to be my fear, right? So I'm scared of heights, right? I mean, I always watch those videos of the people who jump down like a mountain, and I personally think that if I jump down, I might just turn into a human pancake. And that's not really on my bucket list. I don't know about you, but I don't really want to die very soon. So I'm scared of heights. That's just one thing you learned. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to print it out to make sure it works using our get function. So get secret and semicolon. Okay, so far we don't see any errors. Let's run our code and let's make sure it works. So first of all, we set our secret to I'm scared of heights. Then we wanted to get it. Let's see if it actually prints my secret out. It doesn't. Okay, I'm getting lots of errors today. Why? Let's see. Cannot find symbol, get secret. Did I spell it wrong? Method, get secret. Over here, return secret 1. Let's see. Actually, guys, it was a really stupid error. Let's see if you spotted it. But get secret, where are we getting the secret from? We're getting the secret from Sunny, right? So I'm a little out of sorts today because I just came back from Delaware. Maybe it was too hot, fried my brains a little. But we have to get secret from Sunny object, right? So I forgot to add that in. That's why it doesn't recognize get secret. So let's run it again. And this time, let's cross our fingers and hope it works. Yes, there we go. It works. So now I'm scared of heights. It works. So guys, we just did job encapsulation. A little rough on my end. Brains got a little fried from the Delaware trip. It was a little hot. But little errors, but it was a good learning process for all of you to see what not to do and what to do. Again, in review, job encapsulation is used to make sure that sensitive data is hidden. And mainly, we work with private/protected variables. We didn't talk about protected variables. We will in the future, as well as get and set methods. Okay, so next video, we're going to take a break from all this classes nonsense, and we'll talk about some multi-dimensional arrays. I'll see you then. Bye, guys.